In.
Yeah.
Live. This is Tio and the Arcane Bear. We have a wonderful guest for you today. This is one of the Bear family's recommendations, Alex Suanders from NuggetsNews. This is our first blind date with a crypto creator. Alex, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I feel honored to be your first blind date, Tio.
No, it's good. I think we're off to a great start. The pre-warm-up discussion was going in exactly the right direction. I like these kind of more freestyle podcast areas, and for us as creators to be able to collaborate and share thoughts around this space, I think is extremely valuable.
Looking forward to it. Let's dive in.
Yeah. So one of basically what has happened here is Lee Fonseca. Shout out to him. He decided to recommend us to communicate together. You've got a Caleb and Brown poster in the background. So if you listen to Eminem's new album, on the first song, The Ringer, he says, I'm not about bank accounts. I'm off the chain like Caleb and Brown. Thought that was a great quote. And I don't think many people would necessarily recognize that in the background because he spits so fast. But this is essentially what has started this conversation. So Alex, I guess the first question is, tell us a little bit about NuggetsNews and how you ended up in the crypto space as a creator.
Oh, okay. So I guess I went down the crypto rabbit hole 6 years ago now, and I'm actually a pharmacist by background. I'm sure we're going to dive into that side of things as well. But yeah, I've been helping my friends and family understand Bitcoin and crypto for a number of years now. And then last year, everything took off, and I got out I think I only had like a Samsung S4 phone at the time, and started recording some videos on YouTube to help people buy Bitcoin and crypto in Australia. And before you know it, in a matter of weeks, it was a full-time job, and I'd quit pharmacy, and now I do this full-time, and we have a few people that work for us, and we help Australian startup projects. We do all sorts of things now, podcasts, and every day looks different, and you probably know what it's like in this space.
Yeah, we're so early on. And I think one of the interesting parts here too is that because the tech space in general is so tech heavy, the room for people like us who are more socially curated individuals to thrive here was just ripe for the entry point. I guess what I want to jump into right there is your thoughts on you're helping accelerate companies in Australia. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, so a lot of people don't realize that you can pay any bill in Australia with cryptocurrency, and you've been able to do that already for 3 years.
Wow.
As well as actual adoption at the point of the merchant. So when people are walking in, a lot of people now can pay with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum. We did an episode about the Brisbane airport, and that got them a lot of tourism. So we're looking to onboard big businesses, and we've got entire towns now where every shop actually accepts crypto. But again, we have another service, as I mentioned, that if you get your teeth out at the dentist, you can now pay that bill online with Bitcoin. So we're really leaps and bounds ahead here in Australia, and it's just all about awareness. And that bull run last year, for a small, relatively small country of 25 million people, we were having tens or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people sign up to our local exchanges, which is just nuts.
Yeah, it's good to see that type of volume. And you're right. I don't think a lot of people recognize that. Even I was not totally aware that you could actually use crypto to or Bitcoin. What other digital assets or digital currencies do they accept other than Bitcoin for paying, say, your electrical bill or some of your more regular bills?
Yeah, so the website is called Living Room of Satoshi, and they now have 11, maybe 12 assets. So they've got Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, PivX, Monero, Dogecoin. So just a bit of a mix. NEM, now Binance Coin have been big supporters of them. So it's just a bit of a mix of sort of 11 or 12 top assets. Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love hearing that they accept Dogecoin. I know a lot of people make fun of that, but I think one of the big indicators of the value of a meme is really the belief in something. And a lot of people really miss over the fact that the only reason fiat currency has any value is because the people believe it to have value. And Dogecoin is very similar to this. So that's quite exciting to hear that they accept it, because that was a prime example of the value of this new type of digital internet money in the first place, is that if we choose to trust something, that's our choice, and then that gives it the value. For instance, if I want to sell you this beautiful jug of coconut water for $1 million and someone's willing to pay it, that is now the value of that particular product or service.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of
I,
people think value is inherent or intrinsic.
I was just double checking there, Tio, because I didn't want to tell you a lie, but they definitely accept Dogecoin.
See, that's amazing. That to me is amazing because it really shows the sentiments of the market and the industry that we're in right now, is that we have the ability to create value in what we believe, which is for the last, I don't know how many hundreds of years, it's been left up to the general central authorities to create what they believe to have value, at least in the form of money. Even with gold and silver, it's more of a centralized form of money because of the amount of work that it goes through to create, to mine gold or silver. Whereas here we can work on code as individuals and have something out the door by the end of the week. It's fascinating.
And what I love about Dogecoin and Litecoin as well, to some extent, it just shows me that the early adopters don't take themselves too seriously. And it's a lot of it is about community. And in terms of these people are probably millionaires, but they're not just going to dump these coins for the sake of it to drive the price down. They really don't care. They just want to hodl, and they're part of that community now. That's what I love about these early coins and the communities.
Yeah, I think that's down that same road and travel. That is the value of anything really, is the community input. If you don't have community, you've pretty much lost almost everything of value in life to begin with. We try to constantly go over that. Your friends, your family, those are the real value of richness in your life. So if a community can actually agree on something, this is where government and governance originally came from. Is we've basically given our power away to a governance structure because they were part of our original community basis to begin with. Yet the realization that we are the power in that, I think, is often forgotten. So it's a great way to remember, and to not take ourselves too seriously, because this is a pretty big deal for everyone too.
I knew we'd be going off on tangents today, but one of the things you've just sent in about a sense of community, we looked at studies in the pharmacy world about what makes people live longevity-wise over 100 years. What do these communities have in common that are scattered around the world? And a couple of the things that we no longer do in the Western world was sense of community and very strong sense of family and respect for elders. So being very, very important.
No, that's so I've actually read a few studies on that idea as well. The topics of like the National Geographic's blue zones, some of the similar qualities that these people would have that actually allowed the centenarians, or the people that would live over 100 years, was a little bit of sunshine and gardening every day, family and community, beans and rice potentially as well, and fresh water, fresh air, and then they're usually good to go. We're very resilient creatures. So I guess while we're on that topic, you want to tell me a little bit about your background in the pharmacy world?
Yeah, so growing up, I always was pretty sporty and active, as most people are in Australia. And so I was always fascinated with how the body works. And then, decided to do pharmacy. I had a part-time job when I'd left school to pharmacy, and got on well with my boss. And he said, you should go study this. So, went down to uni and studied pharmacy for 4 years, and then a prac year it is these days, so 5 years of study, and then worked as a pharmacist for 5 years up until last year. But in the medical world, it's very much a case, what I found was people that are very book smart and people that aren't open-minded, and that wasn't me. So a lot of the things that I found out, or the extra study I was doing, or YouTube videos I was watching, I really learned a lot of things that were opposed to the views in the medical world. And that was a little bit at odds sometimes with even staff members that I'd work with. I'd be telling someone, hey, maybe you should try this. Although the doctor won't ever tell you this, I think, trying this might make you better, this more natural thing. And that to me was just another example of that the world doesn't function the what we're taught at school, or what the banks or the governments tell us the way the world works. You have to get out there and do your own research and form your own opinion, because a lot of this stuff we're taught is just inside this cozy little box that we live our lives.
Yeah, early last year, we had the pleasure of having Bruce Lipton on our show. He's a neurobiologist, one of the godfathers of epigenetics, and he had tenure at Stanford before quitting. And one of the reasons why he stated his departure from that particular institution was the fact that science was not keeping up with the scientific data, that what they were continuing to teach at these high-level forms of education were actually severely outdated and not current with the evidence that we were finding. So it's important to recognize that a lot of these systems are outdated that are trying to educate people. And I think that's extremely important too, because there's a whole wealth of knowledge that can be found when you dive into the online world and start doing your own research. I guess from the bridge to that, I was always a big fan of the research into sacred plant medicines, things like ayahuasca, San Pedro, and nowadays we see magic mushrooms, MDMA. These are all starting to hit clinical trials, and I think that's a lot of evidence that we're getting to a more progressive state of thinking as a global society. Did research or study anything like this while you were younger as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be careful with what I say, I guess now, but I've seen people try these substances and whatever firsthand, and particularly people and pharmacy students or medical students. And when we're learning about these substances, and you are taught that an antidepressant increases serotonin, and that's trying to help someone with depression. And then you're taught that ecstasy increases serotonin, but that's bad. It's a bad drug. And you're kind of thinking, well, hold on, why is one bad and one's good if they're doing the same mechanism? Because one is a patented substance that a company can make money off. And let's be honest, the others are dangerous if they're made in labs with bad chemicals. So I'm not saying that, hey, it's all just safe, but it made me very open-minded to, well, why are these substances that are psychoactive that are doing similar things so stigmatized? There might be something here. And now we're starting to see that when they're studied in safe environments and produced in safe labs, that they have got these clinical beneficial effects. And that was, I guess that was another one of those light bulb moments where I was looking around the classroom thinking, is anyone else going to think or ask the teacher why one is good and one is bad if they're doing the same thing? And there's such this stigmatism that we've created around drugs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence now in the Forbes articles that the business world is actually leaning in this direction. We see the the CEOs of large companies going to play at Burning Man to start thinking outside of the box. I believe Tesla's first experimental car was actually brought to Burning Man for their first test rides. You have people like Steve Jobs, who attributed many of their successes and almost all of Silicon Valley to the use of psychedelics and these more abstract psychoactive chemicals. So over the last 20 years, what once was cliche, or not cliche, what once was stigmatized is becoming mainstream. I've been very, very grateful for that as well, because it's been removing the criminal aspect from something that should have been medicinal the entire way, especially with thousands of years of indigenous practice proving that it already had that.
Oh, yeah. I remember my chemistry teacher saying, where do you think the song "We All Live in a Yellow Submarine" comes from? And these sort of, creative rhymes. And you're thinking, yeah, you're right. But it's just hard to hear that as a kid that's never thought about these things too much before. And as you get older, I guess you grow into it, and it's not all this evil that it's made out to be. I know a documentary I absolutely love lately was A Leaf of Faith about kratom and how much that's helping people in the opioid crisis in America, yet they're trying to make that illegal. And they got 100,000 signatures on that petition. And just things like that. I love seeing the community come together. And with the internet and how connected we are, it's never been easier to have a voice and say, hey, this isn't bad. This is helping this people, and so on.
Yeah, I guess that brings us to decentralization. The fact that, well, right now we're recording a video with fairly high quality audio and probably around 1080p on the video side. We'll be able to upload it and stream it to thousands of people. The process of decentralization has really has been consistently putting the power back into the sovereign individual's hands for them to do their own critical thinking and research. And I think that's changed a large amount of the way people view what was once the information that was essentially force-fed through them, through these older institutions to begin with.
I was just going to say on that, we get paid very little, if anything, for a podcast or for a YouTube video. Once we have these fully decentralized platforms where the content creators are getting more of that, then the cycle and that feedback loop gets even stronger, where we can create more content that people actually want to consume, and then watching even less free-to-air TV or mainstream media news, and we talk about these subjects even more. I just love it.
Yeah, it's been an extremely inspiring journey the last few years to see this very rapid and sudden change towards this new direction. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that we are now the older generation, and there's now the younger generation, and their mindset and what they are interested in caring about is drastically different. I think as we get closer and closer to that extra 4 billion people coming online, the people that are, I think open source and decentralization only makes sense, because Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms aren't worth anything if we stop using them. The only reason they have an IPO market at the levels that they do is because we use them. And that's, again, just the same way as government. The only reason they have power is because of us. So just as easily, we should be able to take it away from them when they decide to screw with us.
Yeah, and it's funny that everything from, you know, the drug world, where it takes 10 years to get something through all these clinical trials, in the social world, it almost takes a generation to change people's thinking to certain ideas that are really ingrained. And I think we're already kind of seeing that, whereas the people 10 years younger or 15 years younger are already a little bit over Facebook than the people that are 30 that are using Facebook. This sort of, it's always changing, and people are not just going to accept what was accepted previously.
Yeah, Facebook is a great example. I mean, we're the old farts that are still on there now. All the younger kids have already stopped using the product. A lot of recent polls have shown that the demographics between 18 and 25, which are the richest demographics to essentially grab the attention of, have been leaving in mass from these platforms. A lot of them still use Instagram. There are a few others out there as well, because they're a little simpler, not in context, but just in ease of use. I guess we should dive back into the crypto space. What is it, if you were to guess from a prediction standpoint, and I hate making predictions, let's say actually more of an operating assumption, what do you think the next 6 months in the digital asset space looks like?
I think in a base case scenario, we could go sideways if the ETF doesn't get approved, and, you know, every day that goes by, that's maybe more likely to come on board in Q1 or Q2 of next year. But if we do get that backed product that people are talking about, I know that's going to get a lot of excitement. And people are excited about the fact that Wall Street and big institutions might invest. But our thesis on the channel has always been, I'm more excited about, you know, Africa, or where we're going to get some real grassroots. Give me 1 billion people rather than $1 billion to put into Bitcoin any day of the week. And that's what's really going to drive it long term. And only last week we saw 40,000 accounts opened in Uganda with Binance going there. They're going to one by one go to these countries, and these people now have crude smartphones and digital ID cards. They're not living in these, you know, in the dirt like we picture them in Africa anymore. These countries are developing very, very quickly. And if they start to use this as any form of money, that's very exciting.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that Asia will take the next few years in the lead, probably Australia included, because you guys are so close to the infrastructure and development. But I believe that the long-term play is definitely Africa. We've seen almost time and time again, the lack of infrastructure actually increases the speed of adoption, because there's nothing to replace. If you have nothing to replace, you don't have to, it's like an old septic system or no septic system. If you have no septic system in some of these older countries, to go in and put a septic system in is a big pain in the ass. But if you have nothing, the new infrastructure like a biodigester, which leaches clean water, can produce methane for your hot water, etc. These are extremely easy to install because there's nothing to remove first. It's like trying to remove McAfee antivirus.
I think I love the example of mobile phones, and these people never got copper wires and house telephones. They just skip that infrastructure altogether and go straight to mobile phones. And maybe they're just going to skip, banking and payments infrastructure and go straight to this peer-to-peer system on smartphones.
Yeah, you see the M-Pesa, the ability to pay with mobile minutes, especially because, and I think it's a highlight of the effect of information itself too, that the data is one of the most valuable forms of information and communication. That's essentially what money is. It's a value transfer via data from one party to another. One of the simple questions that the blockchain helps solve. But I think that people are more used to the fact that data is actually more valuable than money itself over there. So it's an easier sell because they're already used to that type of payment gateway.
Yeah. Do you agree with that then? Are you definitely excited about that side of things, or do you put much weight in everyone that's cheerleading the ETF and backed products?
I think that's a lot of misdirected excitement. The institutional investors, they're not okay. So I'll give some preface. We get to have some conversations in the background with some of the OTC deals that go on. We've helped people move significant amounts of money. It's not that the institutional money can't get in. what it comes down to is that most people still don't know. It's not necessarily that if you provide them a product to get in that they will. It's that they don't have the information to make those good judgments. And a lot of the times we see that adoption is coming from places where they realize the problem. So they realize that fiat is garbage and that the governments have taken advantage of this particular collusion between the money printing and the governance systems. I'll call it crony capitalism. And that when they realize that that's the problem, that's where you see mass adoption. Whereas if no one realizes why the US dollar has a problem, it doesn't matter what tools you give them to enter into that space, they're likely not going to make that decision. So I don't think the ETF or things like BACT are that important. I think they bring a lot more hype to the mindset than they actually bring value. I think the real value comes from the understanding and why this information is valuable. Because unless you know you have a problem, you're not going to do anything about it. And a lot of the first world countries don't realize that they have a problem.
Yeah, and I think even with the price predictions you see, I've said that I think Bitcoin could go to $100,000 in the next, maybe 5 years from now. But at that point, the US dollar may have lost a lot of value. And what's a loaf of bread cost you as well? So you've got to kind of be careful what you wish for. If we do have another downturn or recession and we have another round of money printing and then money loses its value, and all those things contribute to what the dollar price of Bitcoin might actually be.
Yeah, I think the perfect example of something like this is the Weimar Republic in the from 1918 to 1923. You had, it's not that Bitcoin's price necessarily is going up. It's that the realization of the worthlessness of the dollar is starting to actually take effect. And that's why the value appears to go up. I think it's a very difficult concept to understand because people believe often, I think gold, like they use the comment of, there's intrinsic value in gold. It's like, well, this is absolutely not true. If you're in the middle of the desert and you have nothing and I offer you an ounce of gold or a cup of water, I can guarantee you, I know which one you're going to take. You're going to take what has value to your life in that moment. So intrinsic is a commonly misunderstood word, especially when you start to look at value transfer systems, right? I mean, none of these things have any value if we were to get hit by a meteor or lose the internet. Even gold itself there's no real value to that other than, well, do you have food or do you have water and do you have shelter? Because those are the keys to survival. We look at money as almost, I think, a secondary. Once survival's set, then we can start to procure value and actually save that energy for a future date.
Yeah, we might get hit by a meteor that's full of gold as well, man. Make it less scarce. Yeah,
exactly. It's a very difficult. I think it's a very difficult concept for most people to understand. Even myself, like with Dogecoin, trying to grasp the fact that intellectual information and the viral aspect of something is the value of it to begin with. It takes a lot of, I'm going to say almost meditation to come to these deeper understandings that value doesn't exist in anything. We give it value, and then from there, the proposition changes. So back to the Weimar Republic, when hyperinflation started to hit, you had, I think it was one, and I hope I don't make the mistake here, but 1 Swiss franc or Swiss mark to 1 ounce of gold. And then by 1923, it was 1 trillion Swiss francs to 1 ounce of gold. So I've made comments quite often that I think Bitcoin could go to trillions of dollars, because if the true value of fiat currency is realized, which is absolutely nothing, then what is the price of Bitcoin? And that's what you want to, I think that's what everyone's really interested to find out is, when do we care how many Satoshis does something cost? Because a Bitcoin could end up being worth trillions of dollars if the US dollar is worth nothing.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you've watched Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money series.
Yeah, he
put out those new ones the other day, and that's something that we've spoken about a lot, is that when do China, Russia, and America, that are all sort of at odds with each other a little bit, when do they just say, well, hold on, we're all just printing money out of thin air to buy these resources of each other? Why should Russia keep giving US oil for these pieces of paper, or China keep giving the US gold for these pieces of paper they print out of thin air? And at some point, it's going to come down to real resources, land, energy, and we're going to have to back by something, because otherwise everyone's just not backed or pegged to anything, and they're all trying to steal these assets and land grab off each other. And that's certainly how it's already starting to play out with these new deals that they're negotiating.
Yeah, I think That's that same sentiment, until people realize what the problem is, and nothing's going to change. So I'm not all that excited about backed or the ETFs. I think it's a lot of overdriven hype. If the institutional market will invest probably a small amount. We've had family offices of over 25,000 plus investors reach out and say, well, can you help some of our other investors at least try to allocate a small percentage? And it's not that they don't know the space exists, it's that they don't yet know why it's such a valuable space. It's very similar to the internet in the early 1990s. You're like, oh, well, we already have these companies. It's like, yeah, but people don't want to be put out of business, but that's what you want to try to do every day, is put someone else out of business, or at least put yourself out of business. And that's what these technologies essentially do.
Yeah, and I think when I say I'm looking forward to it, I think almost to get it out of the way. Once we have this and it's there for those people that want it or whatever, that's great. But can we get back to building stuff, and can we get back to scaling and adoption and education, and stop every YouTuber is talking about the Bitcoin ETF and all this sort of stuff, and that's not what made Bitcoin great for the past 9 years.
Yeah, exactly. I just, as you said that, I heard make Bitcoin great again in the back of my mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't make those puns. Yeah.
No, it was good. I think the world is full of comedy. There's a lot of sentiments that, tragedy is only tragedy for a certain amount of time, and then it becomes comedy. And I think we deserve the ability to laugh at these mistakes, and the growth of our species. I'm not a big fan of conspiracy, although I do think there's a lot of collusion for a lot of bad things on the planet. I don't think that there's this overarching like demonic energy. I've done a lot of research into those metaphysical spaces, and as much as you might be able to find some credibility to those statements, I think it's actually more of a role playing. Like, it's easier to play the victim card if someone else is holding you down. But as soon as you empower yourself to be like, wait, I'm in charge here, you get a hell of a lot more done.
I mean, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much because we could talk forever. But I've had friends that have gone out of body through meditation, and then I've had friends that have done the ayahuasca. I've had friends that have done both, and it's so just deep. Is that going inwards? Is that your consciousness, or are you actually going outwards into another dimension? I mean, you could just think about these things forever, and the mind boggles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the other thing I think that's like part of the inherent flaw in the human species. Because the world is full of the universe is full of chaos. We could be smashed in by a meteorite, or maybe a volcano, massive volcanic eruption could basically eliminate us. We look for security and comfort. And as a species growing through, hiking through the jungle or something, if you could find comfort or security, it was something that you would bask in. And now it's so easy to do that we've built it into almost every infrastructure, forgetting the fact that we're on a ball of ice and rock floating through space, and really missing some of the simpler aspects of value which are right in front of us.
Exactly. And sometimes you've got to have an experience that isn't just following that beaten track of going to school, going to uni, getting a 9-to-5 job. You've got to go out and experience life, and people have those moments. We meet people every day that tell us, it was this experience that put me down the rabbit hole to watch this or to learn about this. And it's very much a social movement, I think. Bitcoin, you very rarely meet people that are into Bitcoin and come to these meetups that are, everything's fine with government and the world's a great place and our medical system's fine and we're all healthy. It's once you're open-minded, you're open-minded to everything.
Yeah, no, that's a great sentiment too. I think that to battle against maybe the ETF and some of this institutional money is like, well, everyone that was into the Bitcoin space at first were all anti-government, anti-rule, anti-regulation. So, these people being like, oh, the security tokens are the next big thing. It's like, I don't believe that's the case. I think this is the older investor trying to make sense of what's already happened. It's like they've already been put out of business. I don't think security tokens make any difference. They're still trying to integrate an older system into the new one. They're still trying to figure out how to plug their VHS machine into the internet and be like, oh, this will work, right?
Yeah, I've got some pretty strong views on security tokens. So I think with the ICO space, it started off great with DigX and the DAO, until it got hacked. But right. The concept started off great. And then obviously it went to that absolute mania and we swung too far to the right. And now people have probably learned their lessons and they've learned the hard way, and it would have improved anyway. But now we're going to swing too far back to the old style. And with security tokens and being fully regulated, that's only a step away from listing on it and doing an IPO. And I think in another year, people are going to be like, oh, hold on, we need to swing back, and we do want to build a community and crowdsource it. We don't just want to be owned by a few rich people and be fully regulated. And we're going to find that happy medium, I think, down the track.
Yeah, a pendulum swing back and forth between the two, because that makes a lot of sense. Well, Alex, I don't know how long we've been talking. It was probably somewhere around the 30 to 40 minute mark. I've had a pleasure with our first blind date chat. I hope we can sit down and do something like this again. I know I'm going to try to head to Australia and New Zealand. Bruce Lipton had actually invited me over to his house, so I would be a fool to say no to such a gracious idea. So I'm going to try to head over that way. On the last version of our sentiments here, I see you're wearing an Omisego shirt. Do you want to tell me a little bit about, I know the community is so powerful. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your community's favorite tokens, companies, and directions over the next little while?
Yeah, I hate to shoe a coin, but in Australia, we're very lucky that we've had some good projects. So Power Ledger just won Richard Branson's award for Best Startup Tech Company, and they're doing the peer-to-peer energy trading. We've got lots of solar abundant in Australia, so hopefully we can reshape the energy grid. A small little company called Horizon State, which is very popular in Australia, to do voting and democracy, a very strong core mission. And then we've got a few agriculture projects. We've got a nice little app that's going to come out and make it very easy for people to onboard without having to do KYCs for exchanges. So we've got plenty of projects in Australia that are going well. I won't talk about them too much. People can come and check them out if they're interested.
Nice. Well, I will definitely put it on the list to come and check out, and hopefully you guys can show me around. Thank you, Alex. Again, remember, Bear family as well as Nugget News family, throw us those thumbs up. It helps other people later on down the stream find the information they're looking for, because, views, memes, this kind of thing. YouTube loves it when we click those buttons. Also, if you have not yet subscribed to either of our channels, please do so by visiting either Nugget News or Arcane Bear, and vice versa. I'm sure nuggetnews.com.au or arcanebear.com, you can check out some of our latest information. And I'm sure Alex has some beautiful Nuggets News swag as well. You got any plugs you want to make?
No, I was just going to say thanks so much for having me, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and that time flew by. So we'll definitely catch up again in the future or when you're in Australia.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Thank you, Alex. We'll chat again soon.
Cheers.